Caroline Bruce, and I have apologies for lateness from Councillor Neveson and Councillor Kawesa. We shall start with the declarations of pecuniary interest. Can you please indicate if there are any? Okay, we shall proceed then. Minutes of the previous meeting, are they agreed? Thank you. And we'll move to item 4, the response to recommendations from the Sustainable Communities Scrutiny Panel. Councillor Judge.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a response to a recommendation from the Scrutiny Panel to Clarion, which Clarion have picked up and agreed with, and it's in respect that of the recommendation that an ambassador or equivalent post should be formalised in terms of the individual housing estates and widely promoted so the residents are fully aware of the opportunity to work with Clarion, which will strengthen their relationship. And it's good to know that Clarion have apparently been very positive about this. It's been raised directly with the regional lead for South London from Clarion, who has agreed to consider introducing a community inspector and champion scheme. The project will focus not only focus on communal estate issues, but also issues that relate to residents, so that the community inspector or champion can bring those issues to Clarion's attention. And residents, we're told, will be involved to help shape the new project. And that includes vulnerable residents, so presumably there will be some training and facilitation of community champions in that respect. And the council has 6 weekly regular liaison meetings with Clarion, so we'll be looking forward to an update on the pilot by January 26. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. We're being asked to note the information. Are there any comments from Cabinet colleagues? Councillor Kawesa.
Thank you very much, Leader, and apologies for my punctuality. I just wanted to ask the Cabinet member what impact will enabling this acquisition of existing properties from the private market have on the temporary accommodation levels?
Well, that's a good question, and I think perhaps I could just say it will relieve us of the obligation of paying for expensive nightly properties in terms of temporary accommodation. But I think that's great innovation that we'll move on to shortly. It will also provide better quality properties for local residents who are in need of temporary accommodation. But more of that to come. Chair, I think we're probably moving on now to recommendation 5.
Yeah, so I think we're moving on to the next item. So just before we get onto that, we can speak in more detail around temporary accommodation. Do we agree to note the information contained in this report?
Agree.
Great. Okay, and then we'll move on to Merton's response to the housing crisis.
Well,
the Judge.
I think there are 2 important things to note there. There's been considerable cost pressures on the council of more than £7 million. The council has set up a scheme to look at cross-council issues, of 4 in particular. And one of them is temporary accommodation, because it's costing us more than £7 million a year. And it's difficult to anticipate where that will go in the future. And we have taken forward 6 work streams and 60 individual actions in relation to that. So there's some detail in this report, but there will be more to come in months to come. The second is to note the investment that we're making via residents and purchasing property. And perhaps I could invite the director later just to speak to the detail where we are on that. this is a really important template report, really, for our direction as a council. And if you look at C, the recommendation C is to approve the acquisition of property for use as temporary accommodation. And that's one of the main actions we can take, is to increase supply of social housing. We're creating a £20 million budget to do that. It will involve £30 million borrowing by the council, and it will more than £7 million of public funds. And this recommendation is to approve the acquisition of property using that budget. And the director will be able to tell us where we are insofar as he's able, because these are confidential discussions we're having with potential property providers, and they are in the throes of those discussions and not complete. And it's subject to the executive director seeking and obtaining that grant funding we need. E generally delegates authority to the executive director. It's really important that when you have a comprehensive housing programme, as we have here, that it's not necessary to come back to Cabinet for every dot and tittle of every future measure. And it's important to delegate a strong measure of responsibility and authority to the director, and essentially in tandem and in consultation with the executive director for finance and digital. So looking at E, that generally gives authority to the executive director. F is about our 75 homes programme that we're taking forward. We're confident we can let the contracts very soon indeed, before Christmas, and that we anticipate the works will start in this financial year. And those are for 75 homes on 3 sites: Farm Road, Raleigh Gardens and Elm Place. So Elm Place, Elm Nursery Car Park in Mitcham. And we did have a proposal for the Cannons. We've decided to go for further design on that, because we have now acquired further land for the use of housing, and we anticipate it would be better to redesign the proposals for the Cannons and to come back with a revised proposal looking at the complete site there. H is absolutely a critical recommendation in terms of the forward direction of this authority. It's to determine that the council should become a stock holding authority. And in order to be a stock holding authority of any substance, of more than 199 properties, we need a housing revenue account. We have now determined we're going to establish a housing revenue account, not immediately, but when we need to do so, and no doubt it will come back to Cabinet and Council for the formal process. But this is also to approve a budget envelope of £500,000 to enable a housing revenue account to be established. And just moving on from there, we're looking to bring a housing delivery business plan to the council, and this is to approve the preparation at K of such a housing revenue business plan. And at N, we can see further authority to the executive director to submit bids for funds from various public bodies, which is necessary in the context of any housing programme. So those are the recommendations, that, or at least some of the recommendations. So you can see the full list of recommendations before you. Very important. And some of the factors behind our affordable housing programme are actually listed in the report. So one is about affordability of housing. in Merton and in London. And we can see at paragraph, I think it's 2.4, that the cost to residents of the average house price of buying a house in Merton is higher than the rest of London. And it's £622,000 as of April of this year. And that's an 11% increase in 2022. We've got more than 10,000, I think it's about 10,500 people on the housing register, and that's a 10% increase in the last 5 years. We've now got 751 homeless households, and we are better. We're actually better at addressing homelessness than practically every other London borough. You know, we're very good, for instance, at preventative work, but we still have an issue. It's not as serious as many London boroughs, but it's a significant issue for us. And that represents a 260% increase in homeless households since 2020. You know, many people are driven, perhaps the private rented market has contracted, perhaps some behaviours of landlords seeking very high rent increases has occasioned or driven them to evict tenants who are then forced on the borough. And we have our statutory housing duties, which we seek to take forward there. So those are some of the underlying factors that are affecting our determination to become a housing authority in full, once again, having not been so for many years. So this is a very detailed report, and there may be questions in relation to it. Could I just ask Jeremy, as the Executive Director, about recent progress that is non-confidential, that he can mention in a public setting, in respect of acquisition of temporary accommodation?
Thank you, Councillor Judge. And Jeremy, if you could also take into account the really important point that Councillor Kawesa made earlier around the acquisitions, temporary accommodation acquisitions as well, in your response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first thing, if I may, is just to apologise for recommendation, well, just lost it, sorry. Recommendation F, it's like a double whammy. Elm Place is not Elm Place, it's the former Elm Nursery car park on London Road. So apologies for that. In respect of this whole paper, as Councillor Judge has outlined, the council has a corporate plan, Building a Better Merton, and one of the key aspirations in Building a Better Merton is to tackle the housing crisis, and there are a number of levers at our disposal to do so, which are set out in the report. And as Councillor Judge has said, or you as a cabinet made a resolution in June this year to allocate just over £12 million of capital from the capital programme to match with just over £7 million of MHCLG funding for property acquisitions as a way of trying to address the temporary accommodation crisis. And in direct answer to Councillor Judge, we're under offer on 12 new build properties and 8 street properties, with some others it's still in negotiation. So we're making good progress, and I'm confident that we'll deliver the 27 homes by March 2026. And that is one of a number of measures that we are taking to address the temporary accommodation housing crisis. So there are other measures as well, and you mentioned Resonance, and as members will be aware, Resonance was a Treasury management investment, and that too is looking to deliver some homes that the council can use for the purposes of temporary accommodation, and there are about 20 in conveyancing at the moment, which will come across to the council. And then, as you mentioned, we're about to go live on the start on site on the first 75 homes, and we're in active discussions with the GLA about firming up the grant position. And then as Councillor Judge has outlined, the other big recommendation is to become a stockholding authority. And that's really significant in terms of when we've built the 75, where those 75 are then treated as social housing in the housing revenue account. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Cooper Marbia.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Judge for his presentation. You spoke about re-establishing the housing revenue account, and I was just wondering if you could give us more information on how would that benefit Merton's ambition to build the first council homes in a generation and to do our bit to tackle the national housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, it's vital to have a housing revenue account if we are serious about getting back into the business of being a stockholding authority and of managing stock and of funding it in a sustainable manner. A housing, as I understand it, housing revenue account cannot go into a current deficit. So it has to be very carefully managed on the finances. But most importantly, you can't own more than 199 social homes unless you've got a housing revenue account. And we are ambitious, and we anticipate in our future plans that within 2 to 3 years, we may well be triggering the need to have a housing revenue account, and better to make plans now to grasp the nettle which is there in front of us and be willing and determined to start a housing revenue account and to make all the necessary preparations using the 500k that we're going to set aside to do that. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to ask, well, actually, I think this may be better directed at my colleague, Councillor Alan Brittis, but I'm happy for whoever feels best equipped to answer it. But I'm very conscious of the impact that the temporary housing crisis in this country has had on our finances in the last few years. And I'd like to ask how the acquisition of properties for use as temporary accommodation will affect our expenditure in this area.
Well, our anticipation is that it will push it in a relatively in a downward direction. I can't say that in absolute terms because we don't know exactly what the homeless demand is going to be. But at the moment, it is extremely expensive. Most of our temporary accommodation is rented overnight. It's on a nightly basis. And we're carrying out a very large number of actions to reduce those costs. One of them, for instance, is negotiating with the private sector landlords and looking for different arrangements. But ultimately, actually obtaining properties is likely to be the factor that makes the biggest difference. Because if we have our own properties, we're not beholden to the private sector. And however one thinks of it, they cannot demand excessive rent increases when we're putting people in our own properties. But going back to my earlier answer, I think we can be assured our properties are going to be properly maintained, of good quality, and that's not always the case when we rent from the private market.
Okay, there's no further indications for speakers, and I just want to give my thanks to both Councillor Judge, but also to officers for presenting this comprehensive plan in front of us. I can't underestimate the amount of work that has gone into this, and obviously the expertise that our officers are providing on this front. I think it's you know, the challenge that we set ourselves when this new administration formed around building the first council homes in a generation, we can't underestimate the challenge we put on ourselves to deliver that. It is a huge feat, and it is incredible that we are within weeks, months away from the first start on site, providing genuinely affordable homes to high energy efficient levels that will be to the benefit of those very residents that have been on the housing waiting list or facing threat of homelessness for a number of years. And again, just to pay tribute to the team and the cabinet member for that, really excited about this golden age of council building, council homes that is backed by the funding of a Labour government, backed by the funding of a Labour mayor and built by a Labour council. So huge congratulations. And of course, this is a programme that's in its infancy and at the very start. There will be challenges ahead of us, but it is really good to have the backing of this report that has had a lot of thought, a lot of preparation and a lot of hard work put into it. So thank you to all those involved. So we're being asked to agree the recommendations, noting the amendment to recommendation F, replacing Elm Place with Elm Nursery Car Park. So Cabinet colleagues are being asked to agree recommendations A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 6, which is the Planning Peer Challenge Action Plan. Councillor Judge.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is the response to the Planning Service Peer Challenge report that we had. And essentially, it amounts to this. We're a very good planning authority. We want to improve our position even further. One very good way of improving your position is to invite in experts, dispassionate experts, neutral experts from outside, in terms of carrying out a peer review. And they're a mixture generally of members and officers, as they were in this case. And they have produced a very thorough report and a whole series of recommendations. And unless there's very good reason, the only proper response when you get a peer review report is to say, thank you very much, we will put those recommendations into effect. And that is what we can see at Appendix 2. There's a whole series of recommendations in the action plan. Some of them have been dealt with already, but it is intended to be an exhaustive and comprehensive response, thanking the expert panel and putting their recommendations into effect. Because only thus can we be sure that we're taking advantage of that expertise and improving our planning service for the benefit of residents.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Councillor Judge. Jeremy, would you like to add anything?
I don't think there's anything to add, really. I think the action plan speaks for itself. And as Councillor Judge has said, the peer review was positive, but it did make some recommendations and we intend to improve further. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you to the Executive Director and also to the Cabinet Member Andrew George. Looking at Martin's new local action plan, which represents a significant achievement opportunity, can you let me know whether the action plan could contribute and ensure the local planning authority is delivering the best possible service?
Well, thank you, Councillor Macaulay. I think it will. And the very fact that we are intent and focused on putting those recommendations into effect says a great deal about the culture in our development control service, our planning service, that we want to be as good as we can be. If we dealt with the peer review otherwise and decided, oh, we don't like that recommendation, or not too happy with that, that would not be the right approach. But what this suggests is we want to be as good as we can be, and that can only be to the benefit of local residents.
Thank you, colleagues. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I have been a councillor for 40 years in May, and I have always avoided planning in every conceivable way. It's an issue that I think is much better dealt with by some of my expert colleagues. But I just wanted to say that in my dealings with our planning team, I found them to be absolutely exemplary, and I struggle to think how you can make it better, but I'm sure you can, because there's always room for improvement. But every time I have any dealings with them, they are professional, they are prompt, and they're really impressive. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Brilliant, and can I congratulate you in advance for your Ruby anniversary being a councillor. Councillor Judge, did you want to come back on that comment?
We've had some real high points in planning over the years. I mean, for me, one of them was the delivery of 650 homes and a new football stadium for AFC Wimbledon, and that resulted from a huge amount of work on the part of officers. And I particularly commend Tara Butler in that respect, and I worked with her when I was a cabinet member before on that issue. First of all, we changed the planning policy to enable development of a football stadium and to enable development of housing. And now we've got a very successful housing development, a very successful football development in tandem. So that was a real high point. But looking at the development control team now, unlike Councillor McCabe, I'm an old hand, not quite as old as he is, but I'm definitely an old hand. And I would say the development control team has never been better, ever been better in the past than it is right now. So I think we can be proud of that.
Brilliant, thank you. So I see on that positive note, I see there's no further indications to speak. So we'll go straight to the recommendation, which is to agree the proposed actions. We're being asked to agree recommendation A. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, colleagues. So we'll move to the Merton Adult Learning Main Delivery Service Contract. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that being well organised and planning in advance when the current contract runs out in July 26, plans are already in place for finding the next contractors. The current contractor can still apply. There are 3 people of interest. A lot of the delivery is through Merton College, and then we have very many independent tutors who provide throughout the borough, with emphasis in particular on areas of need, especially in the east of the borough. And it's really part of Merton's philosophy that education is never ending. So this is predominantly for 19 plus, but it is giving people a second chance to develop the skills they choose. And it can start at entry level and taking them through various levels of education, including English and Maths, GCSE level 2, which is important for getting improved employment. The contract has been extended, as was agreed previously, and it's up for tender now, and it will be for an initial, I think it's 3 years plus 1 year plus 1 year. And it is a marvellous service, and I think what's particularly a great strength, Merton uses a commissioning model. So there's no cost to the council, and it's all through grants from the ESFA and the GLA, which is great. And although the grants have been slightly cut, they're still producing well, and our residents are achieving from this. and there's a wide range of courses that cover for all needs, and just recommend them going forward with applying for new contractors, of which the current one can also apply.
Very much, Councillor Kenny. Bev, did you want to come in?
Nothing else to add.
Thank you. Colleagues, opportunity to ask questions, comments. Councillor Alan Brittis.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to ask how re-tendering the contract will affect the council's spend on the adult learning service as the Cabinet Member for Finance.
Councillor Amber-Brittis, you're so predictable. Of course, the money, yes, but it is a commissioning service 100%, so there will never be any ask from the council coffers. It is done through the grant system, and the number of learners applying each year is gradually increasing, and sometimes they're doing more than 1 or 2 courses, but it's all funded from the 2 bodies who provide the grants.
Further indications, we'll go straight to the recommendations. We're being asked to agree recommendations A and B. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll go to the Period 6 Financial Monitoring Report. Councillor Alan Brittis.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to ask the Finance Director straight in, because he's got a better handle on the figures.
Thank you, Councillor. So this is the Period 6 report. So it's the second in-year report on our financial position. It is showing an improvement to £4.1 million overspend. That's a £2.4 million improvement from last time, and which includes, importantly, a £1 million improvement at departmental level. So the net position is improving, but challenges do remain. We heard extensively earlier on about the justification for the investment in temporary accommodation and housing. That is critically important, given this is our most acute overspend. So it absolutely bookends the discussion we had earlier. Challenges also remain around DSG, social care and children's, and temporary accommodation. But the report sets out in detail all the mitigations and action plans, not just at departmental level, but at corporate level, given this is a shared ownership of the position we're in, and we'll come forward with further updates. Reports also sets out, as well as those action plans, the impact of our savings and the delivery of those. I am pleased to see the figure up at 87% halfway through the financial year, which is really pleasing. We have a good track record here about delivery of savings, so long may it continue. The report also sets out the latest update on our capital programme, and in-depth the narratives are in there for people to read. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Cabinet members, questions, comments? Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Alan Brittis. And as a previous Cabinet member for Children's Services, as it was then, or Children Education, I'm also delighted to see that the savings in that area in particular seem to be going well. I just wondered if you could outline a bit more about the savings that are being implemented within children and lifelong learning.
I want to thank Councillor Stringer for her question and for her previous work on Children's Services. Just point to 2 savings that are being implemented within Sally's budget, and that is there are efficiencies in Send Transport through route optimisation. I think that's really exciting, and looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. And the other second saving being made is by jointly commissioning with the NHS our services via the Integrated Care Board. Again, that's a challenge to the Integrated Care Board that I hope they'll rise to, but by jointly commissioning, we will make savings.
Brilliant. Councillor Neveson.
Thanks so much, Leader. And thank you very much, Councillor Brittis, for the work that's gone into this, and Assad as well. I'd like to ask, with the capital budget, can I ask a bit more detail on how that's been allocated to reflect some of the council's priorities?
I'd like to thank Councillor Neveson for his question. So, for example, on Civic Pride, there are shopfront improvements. I think the look of the High Street is a Civic Pride issue. On the Borough of Sport, there's obviously the Borough of Sport Infrastructure Fund, and I want to congratulate my colleague, Councillor Caroline Cooper might be on her work on that. And finally, our third sustainable future priority, we have the business retrofit support that we give to commercial institutions. Again, that's all about a sustainable future. Thank you.
Brilliant. I don't see any further indications, so I'm just going to bring in Assad.
Yeah, apologies, Leader. There's a slight error in the recommendation B. That should be the cabinet note, not CLT. So my apologies for that.
Okay, thank you very much for that amendment. So colleagues, we're being asked to agree recommendations A and B, noting that recommendation B be amended, that cabinet note and not CLT note. Are those recommendations agreed? Agreed. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And that concludes